to another edition of The Process Fixer. I am excited to have Sven here with me today. Sven and I have known each other for about a year. In full disclosure, Sven is my therapist, but he also is a performance psychologist for the folks here at TPF, at The Process Fixer. We use him in working with our clients, and he also is one of our company benefits. Sven, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, Sven, tell us a little bit about. Obviously, people will figure out very, very quickly that you have a very unique accent, at least for us here on the West Coast. Is that like Brooklyn or New York City, or what is that?
The accent, I don't know. I've been working with a company whose CEO actually learned English in the United States. So it's a bit of a mix match, a little bit of British English from school times and then copied some of his English. So it's a
Nice.
while.
But you're based in Europe, right?
Yeah,
And you
Germany, yeah.
travel around a good bit over there too, because we talk a lot about your hiking adventures and all those kind of things. But it's good to have you here with me today. We want to talk today specifically about something that has come up with a number of our clients. You know, as you know, Sven, Sam and Tracy Ann on our team work with a lot of companies on helping around culture. And one of the pain points, a lot of what we're doing anymore is we're mapping out the processes inside the organization, and then we're really working with the employees to determine what are the pain points inside the process. Where are things that create bottlenecks, that create challenges, that drain their energy? And honestly, in the last few months, we've had more and more medical clients where we've started to hear from employees that sometimes dealing with the people part of this can be a real challenge. And I think this is true in any business, but certainly it's more so in medical because people are frustrated. They're maybe in pain, which I think is something that is, they might be scared. There could be fear. There could be a lot of emotions in this. So we felt it was a good episode to bring you on board, as a psychologist and say, how do you deal with this kind of stuff when you're dealing with customers? Because you don't want to just tell them, go pound sand, as the American term is, or F off. We don't want to do that. I mean, unless it's appropriate. I mean, there are times where it doesn't make sense to take the heat from a customer like that. But Sven, talk a little bit about that from your experience in psychology, and what are people going through, and how do we better resolve these things?
I think it's a very common issue, all in all. And I think the main thing to understand here is, as you said, people don't come to this place to grow necessarily, to have fun. They come there because they're in pain, because there's something that's so impactful on their lives that they have to go. They don't even want to be there. No one really wants to be there. There's very few people that want to be at the doctor's office or anything medical related. They would
True.
love to not be there. So that's the frame that I think especially people working in the medical field need to understand. And I think deep down they do understand because they work with us on a daily basis. But then if you keep on working in this field, at some point you might become blind to it because you get used to it. So at times it might make sense to get a little reminder and think about, why are people here? They're really in pain, they're really suffering.
Yeah.
Now from this basis, they come and they're already in a state that's not particularly good for quality conversation, right? There isn't necessarily respect. You don't necessarily see the other person. You don't necessarily empathize with the other person because you're in your own little world. You might even be in fight or flight because you're really in pain. Your body is screaming and you're just trying to keep it together and somehow be coherent. And then it takes often one little thing that gets blown out of proportions. Maybe you look at someone and someone doesn't really respond immediately and you explode. You're like, wow, look at me. I'm having so much pain. And you're there relaxing, taking it slow, get going, right? So the atmosphere is full of stress. There's lots of pain. And in that environment, it's easy to have these uncomfortable situations that we're talking about, this conflict.
Is there a way in the initiation of the conversation? Is there a way to set the tone here a little bit? Is that possible? And listen, I'm thinking of clients that we have right now. We have multiple clients that deal with sleep apnea. So we're talking about people that are agitated. We've all had a bad night's sleep at some point in our life. Imagine if you've had you haven't slept more than an hour or two in 10 years. Your level of agitation when you get on the phone is going to be extremely high. We also deal with a lot of doctors that work with situations around vision. You may have somebody on the other line that is terrified. In the last few days, they may have started to lose their vision. That's a scary situation. Is there something you can do at the beginning of that conversation to let them know that you're there to help and you're not, intentionally, there's a process, right? I mean, is there a way to do that, or is that difficult in those situations?
I think it makes sense to preface this by saying that you're working against the other person potentially. So they don't really want to interpret the things that you're doing or saying in a positive way. They are in a negative frame. So you're already kind of going uphill. um, that's something to just know first and foremost. And then it's a lot about the surroundings of what happens before you even talk. How quick do you respond? How easy is it to get in contact with you? How easy was it for them to drive to your place? How do you look? What's your body language? Are you smiling at them? Are you interacting with them in the way that they like? Because some people like to get smiled at. Some people like the complete opposite. They feel fooled if they're like, get that stupid smile off your face. So it depends. And that takes a lot of practice, and sometimes you can't avoid it. But generally it's about body language. Body language is the language you speak the loudest, and always the thing that we initiate a conversation with. That is if we don't speak over the phone. But even now, body language is what speaks loudest.
Yeah, and I think it's important too because you can almost tell body language over the phone, can't you? Right? I mean, it's very apparent in the way that the intonation of your voice and those things. So maybe that's as simple as just, shaking it off before each call and, get yourself in that place. And it's like, okay, I'm relaxed. Because it is true. Sometimes when you respond in one way, people respond in the opposite way, particularly when they're in pain. And we've all seen that before. When somebody is in pain or suffering, they're not thinking with their logical, rational prefrontal cortex. They're in, to your point, that fight, flight, freeze or fawn, and that when you're walking up to it, and that can be challenging. I think also when you're dealing with doctors' offices in particular, you also have to understand that some of the people that you're talking to could be having a mental health challenge as well. And that makes it even more difficult because, logic and reason be damned in those situations. They're going to respond the way that the chemical, transactions in their brain are occurring. And you do have to figure out how to navigate those situations pretty carefully.
Mm, for sure. That's always a risk. And generally speaking, we talk about comorbidity. So if you have one illness, especially mental illness, there's a higher chance that you have another one. So, and that also happens with physical illness, especially chronic one. And it makes sense to be on the lookout for those situations and have this in the back of your mind. So you can be relaxed. So you don't take things personally. If someone is screaming at you, you have two layers of defense now. The first one, they're in pain. They don't even want to call you, right? They're already out of their comfort zone. It's not about you, it's about them, even though they scream at you, right? Keep that distance. So again, you can remain relaxed, just like you said, remain relaxed, calm, slightly positive, a little bit enthusiastic, maybe even, right? There's a point to be made that you want to have energy, positive energy in the conversation, so you can kind of level out their negativity and feeling like nothing will ever work with a little bit of positivity, moving it forward, confirming their choice to maybe go over their limits and say, look, I'm going to call this, I'm going to try and fix this. And you reward that with a bit of positive energy. So that might make sense as well. And that's your first layer of defense, right? You want to stay calm. And in order to stay calm, you have to realize people might be in pain and they might even not want to be there. The second layer is you might deal with people that have a mental illness. And in that case, you can't really expect rational answers. And that's also okay. That's also not about you. Both of these things help be grounded, slightly enthusiastic, and calm.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And listen, I know, here in the States, and we talked about this a little bit before we turned the camera on, things can be very frustrating. And listen, I've worked with, again, we do a lot of work in the dental sleep apnea business, in the sleep apnea business, in the vision business, and dealing with insurance companies is not easy. Everybody knows this in the US. This is a huge issue. We were just the other day talking with some clients, and they said, look, every time we have to verify insurance for this certain company, we wait on hold for approximately 2 hours. And I thought, wow, like, so it's not just the patient. And that's the fast track line on the back end, right? And then they said the worst is when you get connected and they go, oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you, and they just hang up. And now you got to go back to the beginning again. And they're like, it's very, very frustrating to deal with that. And I think it's one of those things that, maybe it's even part, and I'd love your advice on this, is, is empathizing with that patient and saying, look, we're all dealing with similar things, right? We're challenged here. There's a lot of challenges with the insurance. It's almost like creating this enemy, that is the insurance company, and saying, because a great example, we have one client right now where this is ridiculous, but if you need 2 procedures, they must be booked on different days. That's insurance requirements, or you won't get service and you can't get paid. So you're at the same office with the same doctor, but according to the regulations, you cannot talk to them about their second thing that you need to do until the next day. It's ridiculous. And we all know it's ridiculous. It's completely out of our control. I mean, there's just no option for us. And that's one of the places I think where people do get really frustrated, when it doesn't make any logical sense. And they feel like the blame then is on the person on the other side of the call, and that person is they're just as frustrated with the process as they are. How do you put yourself both on the same team and say, look, it's us against the world here, and I'm here, I'm going to do everything I can to help, but I need your help too? Is there a way to frame that?
There's definitely a way to frame that. I want to tell you one thing before that, and that is validate their point first. Don't just immediately go, we're on the same team, because for some people that can be too fast. They don't even want to be on the same team because their anger is still directed at you. So if you tell them, actually, we're on the same team, they won't accept that, even though it's true. So, first thing, and we get to this later, I guess, in more detail when we talk about the process, is validate what they feel. Listen to them and validate their point. And then afterwards, you can be open and you can say, look, um, you're not the first person that is angry about this. I hear this 10 times a day. I am fed up. We've tried to call them, we've tried to change this. They're completely blocking us. It's annoying as hell. I'm sorry, I can't help you with this. I'm just like struggling just as much as you. It's okay to bring some emotion in there because it makes you feel relatable because you're going through the same things.
I think one of the other things that, and we were just talking about this before with another client that we're working on, and I think sometimes it's important to understand where the patient is in their journey, and how this is impacting them. Because if somebody doesn't want to be helped, listen, I had sleep apnea really bad 15 years ago. I was much heavier. My wife kept saying, you need to go get a sleep study. I mean, I remember the first appointment, and he's like, what are you here for? I'm like, my wife makes me come here. I didn't want to be there, right? The circumstances got me there. But I have to admit, after treatment, and I felt so much better, I was like, okay, this is pretty good. I think if I had understood earlier in the process that there was light at the end of the tunnel, that might have helped me get to that destination more quickly, or at least without as much kicking and screaming on my part. So it's like, I think if somebody in the process would have said, look, imagine 3 months from now, you could be treated for this and how much better you'll feel. I probably would have taken that, because I could have pictured myself in that position.
Hmm.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
It absolutely makes sense, which is the problem. It's logical.
I
And
mean,
this we're
great.
talking about emotional people, right? We're talking about people that don't even want to be there, that don't even want to like imagine yourself. They don't want to imagine anything. They want to stop having this, right? And you can tell them, look, we can fix this, all of this. But the first step is the same with cognitive dissonance, by the way. The first step with a very emotional person, especially a person that's in fight or flight, is validate their point. Make them feel less alone, right? This is okay. This is normal. This is fine. You are not overreacting. You're not weird because they're already invalidating themselves, most likely. Maybe they're getting invalidated from their kids or their wife or their partner, anything, right? Ah, it's not as bad. Ah, don't, whatever, right? Or their coworkers. Like, especially as men, we especially struggle with that. In addition to the fact that we generally have more aggression, so the combination is quite bad, we react more aggressively, but then we also invalidate ourselves more. Simply because we are taught that all of this is weakness. If we struggle with sleep, weak. If we feel emotional, weak. If we're feeling hurt, weak. Don't do that. So there's already invalidation.
It's a great point.
Beat, yeah,
That's
beat that,
the
validate.
vulnerability of that is very difficult, I think, for many people, and they may express that as aggression.
Hmm.
You know, when they have to be vulnerable in that situation, they're, you know, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And I think of this as a little boy. You know, you fall down and you're freaking hurting, right? And you want to cry, but you're holding it back.
Yeah.
And that turns into aggression because you're trying to figure out how to express that pain.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a really, really valid point. So let's talk a little bit about, and listen, we've talked a lot about medical, but I mean, everybody deals with this. There's pain in every process. Any interaction with a customer has the potential of escalating to, something that is not healthy or good. And, the reality is we as as the company, as the employee, we've got to hold our composure. Give us a few steps just in general of, if you're dealing with an angry customer, how do you put yourself in the right frame of mind?
So there's a couple pointers here to realize that are about mindset, things to generally know when you're dealing with angry customers. The first one, you want to stay calm. Now, that's often easier said than done. And there's a couple tips I can give to have an easier time staying calm. And one of them is cognitive distancing. If you say something that's aggressive, that's hurting me potentially, take a step back. Don't answer immediately. Give it some time for your mind to realize that you are your own person. You are most likely not reacting to what I specifically said, but you have your background, you have your reasons to be there, you have your pain. Maybe you're blowing things out of proportion. Maybe I'm not even the real target of your anger, but I'm the person that's there. So you project it on me. All of that allows you to feel to remain a little bit distant, which allows you to stay calm or calmer. You can also use breathing techniques. It generally helps to have your general life in order, right? If you're already feeling stressed, if you're already overworked, it's harder to stay calm. And you can also practice that, right? If you just take a deep breath in and then especially a long breath out just before the call.
So you talked a little bit about breathing there. Tell me a little bit about that.
I mean, there's many different techniques, but the one technique I want to focus on because it's very easy is kind of leveraging the parasympathetic nervous system by breathing out for a longer amount of time. So you can take a moment, you can say something. Maybe I want to ask you a question, right? Tell me a little bit about how you feel with the situation, Derrick. And I breathe in and I breathe out for 3 seconds. And that helps me calm down. That sends the signal via my parasympathetic nervous system to my entire body that it's fine. If you have the time to breathe out slowly, you don't need the oxygen, you don't need to fight. So you're basically inhibiting, helping to reduce the sympathetic response, which is the fight or flight response. And if someone is screaming at you, that's what your body wants to do. The body wants to scream back, wow, okay, we're getting attacked, fight. And you can counteract that by breathing. You can also counteract that with being a little bit less tense. So often we clench our jaw, right? Just pay some attention to your jaw, maybe do some weird stuff with your jaw. If you can do that
We're
if
going
you're
to
not
make
a
that into a TikTok
person.
video right there. We're both going.
Yeah.
They're done. That's perfect. That's a perfect, that's social media material right there.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Screenshot that, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you can do that if you're on the phone, for example. But generally speaking, if you're speaking to someone, just take a moment, pay attention to your jaw, and you can train this. It's hard to do it if you're thinking about doing it right now. It will be very hard, but you can train yourself to every couple of minutes just have this thought: relax my jaw, because the jaw is usually something that tenses up when we're in fight. That also helps. And then body posture. Usually that's the neck, right? It's like forward aggression, a little bit back, relaxing. You can also do that again if you're on a call. But generally speaking, paying some attention and just relaxing a little bit. Right.
Yeah, so this is not just about mentally, trying to maintain a calm state, but there are actions you can take, like
Mm.
while the person is, is sort of giving you the business, right? You're
Mhm.
sort of relaxing yourself and trying to remain calm, and that's more than just a mental technique. There's a
Yeah.
physical action that you can take there. You're moving your jaw around, rolling your neck a little bit, sort of preparing yourself, and but still paying attention to that person because you do want to
Mm.
hear.
Yeah, absolutely. There is these techniques, and again, change the body and you change the mind.
Yeah.
That's how it works. That's the entire idea of cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the most potent therapy currently, the most widely spread.
Mm.
You can also train your mind. And the way to do this is just do more of what you're usually feeling stressed about, because it trains your body that it's okay. You're getting used to it. You will have a lower stress response.
I see. So that's a really good point, and it's great. We actually have one of our process mapping experts who's new to our team, comes from 30 years experience dealing with the 911 system, which is the emergency line here in the US. And and he talked. We were talking the other night at dinner, and he was like, "Yeah, he's like, you prepare yourself for every call, right?" And the new people struggle with that because they carry it sort of through. And he's like, the people that have been there 20 years, they're like, okay, I don't know if it's somebody calling to check the time, order a pizza, or it's somebody just found their spouse had been, had passed away. But he's like, you sort of have to prepare yourself, and you have to be, I don't want to say the adult in the situation because that's not the case, but you've got to prepare yourself to understand you're about ready to receive some information that you need to process. And you need to put yourself in this position, in this stance to be able to do it effectively because it's a life and death situation in that. So it's funny that he talked about the same thing. He's like, and I think he even did those actions when he was talking about it. Like you have to sort of get yourself prepared and ready for it because the phone's ringing and it's somebody on the other end that needs help.
Absolutely. It's all interconnected. And sometimes people don't realize that your thoughts, your physiological world, which is your body, heart rate, etc., and then how you feel your emotions. And if I tell you feel angry, you can't. What you can do, and maybe what you would do if that would be a real challenge, is think about something that's making you angry or start clenching your body. That helps. And we do that automatically. So it's all interconnected, and you can influence the things that you want with your thoughts and how you move your body and how you deal with your body.
Listen, I had never thought about that, but it's really true. And I remember playing football when I was younger and those kind of things. You hype yourself up, and you do that by making your body tense and by raising your voice and by doing all of these things that get the juices flowing. But you can do the exact opposite thing as well. You can actually calm yourself down. And let's be honest, I remember, in being in teams playing, competitive sports where if one person gets hyped up, other people around them get hyped up. And it's that limbic resonance, right? We do resonate what other people are doing. And we pick up on that because we are tribal, creatures that work better in teams. So there's an evolutionary benefit to you aligning yourself with the sort of the actions of the persons around you. So by actually doing that, you are calming the situation. By calming yourself down, you're calming the other person down because they're likely to align more with that. And listen, I've had this happen too many times where if you keep your composure when you're dealing with a customer after a few minutes, the customer goes, hey, I'm really sorry. I was an asshole there. And it's like, just, that's totally good, man. I get it. Like, I understand you're going through some challenging things. And,
Uh-huh.
that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to help. And then all of a sudden you are on the same team because they match your energy. What they really, in a lot of senses, you've got that choice right there for either them to match your energy or you to match their energy. And it's a conscious choice. And I do believe that many times we've all experienced this, that it almost becomes a little bit of a challenge. And if you think about it, I don't want to say it's a game, but if you think about it, like, okay, what can I do to help this person? The first thing you can do is calm yourself down. Yeah, I think that's powerful stuff. And I think it's applicable in so many situations. And listen, this isn't just we've been talking a lot about customer service here, but the reality is it's more than that. It's shareholder resolution. It's
Mhm.
having difficult conversations with executives. It's there's just so many elements that go into that and how you can actively use your body, your mind to calm the situation down.
If you think about it, with most communication situations, you want to be on the same team. You want to have a synchronized world, which allows for easy understanding, right? You're on the same team. And the first step to doing that is to calm down. Because when you're calm, you can actually listen to people. And if people actually feel listened to, that opens up this synchronization, right? At that point, they can actually absorb your energy and you can absorb theirs. And this is when you got to be careful. And you can also train that to not absorb too much of the energy because it goes both ways, as you said, but rather be close enough to their energy so they absorb yours. And then you can slowly move it in whatever direction you want. Again, if the difference is too much, you will be disconnected, right? If someone's really sad and you're like, "Ah, I'm so happy," not gonna happen, right? So there's a bit,
Yeah, you can't swing that pendulum too far right out of the gate, right?
yeah,
You gotta,
yeah.
and we've all had that happen where somebody just can't read the situation and they're
Mm.
bouncing around like, hey, this is exciting, and you're like, yeah, you don't. We've all had that happen. You don't read the energy in the room, and you have to sort of match that energy at first in order to be able to change it.
And that's a perfect segue to talking about the default state you want to enter any potentially conflict rich situation with. And that is, you want to be calm, you want to have a neutral, slightly positive, energetic internal world, right? That's the emotions that you want to feel. And from that place, you can go either way. If you're too happy, going to be difficult to go down quickly. You might lose people immediately. If you're too if you're too sad, you might be able to connect to people, but they will feel that you're not actually listening because you seem boring, right? You're sad and you're also there and you feel, but maybe they don't even want that, right? So try and be in a neutral space, slightly energetic, maybe slightly positive. That's where you want to be. And then, depending on who you're talking to, feel the situation out and try and match the energy levels and then raise it to an acceptable level.
Yeah, it's like going upstairs, right? If you're at the top and somebody else at the bottom, you have to meet them part way, and then you can take them up with you. Listen, I think this was really helpful, and I think you can apply this information to any situation. If it's with employees, if it's within shareholders, if it's with board members, if it's with customers, I think a lot of this. I know there's a lot of executives that listen to the show. This is good information to share with your people that are on the front lines that are dealing with customers. You might be in a B2B situation as an executive. You're dealing with other CEOs. You can use this, but if your customers are dealing with, or if your employees are dealing with frontline customers in a B2C situation, this is super helpful information. Sven, how do people find out more about you? What's your website, and how do people can find you on LinkedIn, of course, and they can always, reach you through us. But if somebody's interested in engaging with you, how do they find out more?
My website is performance-psychology-pleger.com. And you can just visit their website and find out everything else.
Well, thanks, Ben, for being here today. This was great stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you all for tuning into another edition of the Process Fixer. We will see you next week.
You ready? Let's go. Welcome to the Process Fixer. Help you see the bigger picture. Derrick Maines is the elixir. Cut and waste away like scissor. Woo! got a problem, he can solve it. He's an expert with the process, so for sure you'll see a profit. Bottom line profit. Analyze the work your people doing every day. Expose the inefficiencies getting in the way. Advise you how to automate, outsource, abbreviate, eliminate, innovate. Now there's more food up on your dinner plate.